4. Lear hammered on the forge with sure and rapid blows. The hatchet he was shaping was bearing the brunt of the young man's anger. Lear was confused by the strange actions of the Pict, Arnak. It was clear now that the hunter had not been trying to seriously harm him or humiliate him. In his mind's eye, the goddess, with the long red tresses and clothing made of leaves, tried to pause his blows and guide his hand. She was trying to cool his self-recrimination and humiliation. He ignored her. Why did he wish to test me? Why risk angering Hotchkanook? I am a slave and no threat to the hunter. Why did he do that? Lear asked himself. Then he noticed he had beaten the head of the hatchet he was working on into an unusable shape. He felt a momentary disgust with himself at his loss of self-control, more than from the burning humiliation at not being able to defeat the Pict. Lear closed his eyes and forced himself to breathe slowly until he was calm. He set the cooling iron aside and picked up another piece to begin. "What sort of work is that supposed to be?" Hotchkanook asked. Lear had not heard him approach. "Forgive me, master. It is the conditions. Sometimes the iron is not heated correctly or has faults. I have asked you for leave to get clay from a river bank. With it I can make molds into which to pour the hot iron, and it would cool to shape. We would lose less pieces," Lear replied. Hotchkanook regarded the young man with uncharacteristic sympathy. Finally the shaman said, "It smarts, doesn't it? Losing to a man you know you have more strength than?" Lear did not respond. "I know I appear wizened to you now, but I too was young. I remember the temperament of a young man. Though you are a Cimmerian, you are near enough to being a real human being that you feel that way as well when you are bested. It cannot be easy, being a slave to your betters, having all your power taken away. Now one more insult upon the injury of your capture." Lear was not sure what the shaman was trying to do, so he remained silent. Hotchkanook placed a hand on Lear's shoulder. "I heard you fought very well, and without any training." "I did what I could," Lear replied. "It is a gift of our kind, that merely by seeing someone perform a skill or listening to how they did it, we can replicate their deed. It is a gift of shamans. I know that my treatment of you has seemed callous, but I assure you it has in fact been a necessity. When you came to us, you lacked patience, and now you have enough to watch for opportunities. Yes, I know you are seeking escape. Why would you not? Well, I may be able to give you a reason to remain with us. Come, I have something to show you." With that, Hotchkanook loosed the chain from Lear's collar and bid the Cimmerian boy to follow him. Lear was about to protest that he had to care for the forge, but a slave woman was called over to put out the fires and put away his tools. She made no eye contact with the shaman, but glared at Lear. Lear thought he had heard someone call her Acorn in the Pictish tongue. She looked to be from one of the duns that lay east of his own. Hotchkanook led Lear out of the Pictish camp. They passed by the wooden fence that the Picts used for a barrier. Crudely carved wooden totem poles and guardian spirits decorated the wooden wall. From some of the totems, the bloody remains of slave bones had been placed in their carved wooden maws. Lear stifled the urge to throttle the shaman. There were too many Picts to fight. Slaying Hotchkanook would only assure that the Picts would wreak more vengeance upon the women. "Where are we going?" Lear asked. "To a sacred place," Hotchkanook replied. "And our purpose?" Lear asked. "Your education, young man, your education. There was a time when men knew that the spirits walked the world beside them, that animals were not a lower form of life. There was a time when men did not blind themselves to the truth that our world is surrounded and pervaded by that of the world of the spirits. Spirits, animals, and men all dwell in the same world. There is no Elysium, as the fools of Mitra claim, nor is there any Hades that the priests used to scare the common rabble into order. There is only this, and it is glorious." Hotchkanook finished his lecture with his arms wide to the world around them. "Surely men die," Lear responded. Hotchkanook was still gracious. He replied, "Yes, there is death, and there is life. What you are about to learn, young man, is that they are not the things that you have been led to believe. I have heard it said that Cimmerians believe that after death your spirit travels to a land of gray mists and bitter cold." "It is so," Lear replied. It was not always so. Once, long ago, your people believed much as we do, that all was interwoven and exists at once, Hotchkinook said. Lear found it hard to believe that his people had ever had any beliefs like those of the Picts. Yet, the Picts named their tribes after animals, and Sumerians had clans that often bore animalistic titles. He filed the disturbing observation away for later review. They walked for almost a mile. They passed along a path in the woods that the Picts had cut for hunting. Lear noticed the signs of deer passing by, and those of a few other animals, the further away they got from camp. The air smelled cleaner as well. It was a heady air full of the scent of pines, alder, and birch. Somewhere lavender was blooming. With the call of the birds above him, he could almost imagine he was free. It was the birds that drew his attention now. Songbirds and jays warbled their presence, but so too did Lear hear the calling of crows. The birds were highly active, and Lear wondered if some art of the shaman or item he carried was attracting them. The two men finally paused by a small clearing marked by piles of stones. The piles stood about as high as Lear's waist and demarcated a ring. Inside the clearing, bare earth could be seen, without a single plant within. Not only did plants refuse to stray there, but so too did the fallen leaves, which stood in bunches outside of the invisible border. Lear shivered. This was clearly the work of sorcery. Hotchkinook bowed low before entering the ring. When he rose, he placed his hands in front of him and made a motion like a man parting a curtain. "Step through," he commanded to Lear. Lear did so reluctantly and with superstitious dread. The moment his foot touched the soil beyond, he felt some force pervade his body. He caught a glimpse of the three god-women who haunted him in the ring. They were holding hands and dancing in a circle. He withdrew his foot and took a step backward. "It's cursed!" Lear hissed. "Nonsense, boy!" Hotchkinook cried. "It is a place that is nearer to the spirits than most, that is all. Within it you will see the wider world, to which most are blind. Come now, I have brought you here for a purpose, and it will not be denied." Having little choice in the matter, Lear stepped inside the ring. The ghostly sight of the three women again came over him. They smiled at him and took a step forward to welcome him, but Hotchkinook stepped into the circle. Then their demeanor turned wrathful and disgusted. They walked backward, keeping their eyes upon the shaman, until they stepped out of the ring and also out of Lear's sight. "Are these cursed gods good for nothing?" Lear asked himself. "Can they not strike down the Pict and all his kind?" Hotchkinook peered about the ring. The shaman clearly sensed that something had been present, but he was unsure as to what. Eventually he dismissed this supposition, and he walked around the perimeter of the space. At places around the circle he bowed and uttered prayers to his ancestors to aid him. Lear watched and memorized the words and gestures. He would sooner call on a demon than a Pictish ancestor spirit, but Hotchkinook's powers must have a fault. The more he studied the man, the greater his chance of discovering it. When the shaman was done, he walked to the center of the ring. He held out his arms and gave a loud cry. Then Hotchkinook addressed Lear. "Once, long ago, when men knew that the spirits, animals, and men were all of the same substance, they worshipped the one that united them, the great god Jebel-Sag. Watch my work, Lear, and learn the proper rite of calling upon the god." Then the shaman drew a strange symbol in the dirt. The symbol resembled not a single animal, but many of them at once. It appeared to be something which imitated a man, imitating animals. It spoke of horns, tail, scales, and claws. It had fur, thick hide, and both arms and cloven hooves. Over this symbol the shaman let out a long, droning tone, and to Lear's mind it sounded as if the shaman was intoning a word. "Jebel-Sag," Hotchkinook intoned many times. Lear felt something within him quake. It was a word similar to the one in his dream, the one where he was being ripped apart. He began to feel uncomfortably warm. "Jebel-Sag," Hotchkinook intoned again. Lear heard something moving in the underbrush. It was large, for it disturbed a great amount of the bracken and forest litter. To his horror, a giant serpent's hood appeared. Its slitted eyes and flicking tongue were not those of some viper. Lear backed behind the shaman as the thing slithered into the circle. Its scales were black and gray, and it curled up in a striking pose before the shaman. The snake was easily 12 to 13 feet long and about as thick as a man's thigh. Jebul Sag, the shaman finished with a cry. Then he pointed his hands at the great serpent. The reptile bowed its head, flicking its tongue across the image of the strange animal man thing. Then it bowed its head again, and laid it on the bare earth before the shaman. Hotchkinuck stopped and patted the serpent as a hunter would a dog. What was that? Lear asked Hotchkinuck. This is what the Argosians call a python. They are named after one of the gods of that people, a monster god that ravages men and crushes them to death. Fear not, he is not venomous. They kill by constricting their prey in their coils. They are not native to these lands, but are the result of shipwrecks. Doubtless some rich merchant thought to keep some as prizes. Many of them die here from our cold winters, but this breed changed. They will never be many, for they need not be. They have power. The bear, the wolf, the hunting cats all avoid them because their scent is not pleasing. They like to hang in the trees and then fall on their prey, or wait in the brush and catch it by the legs as the prey runs by. This is my totem animal. To what purpose have you called this beast? Lear asked. A totem tells of the kind of spirit a man has. You have seen mine. It is powerful, ancient. It can renew itself by the shedding of old skin. None can harm it, and it is the lord of all it surveys. Like myself, Hotchkinuck said with pride. Lear did not reply that he felt a vulture would be more in keeping with Hotchkinuck's character, or perhaps a skunk or a rat. You saw me draw the sign? Hotchkinuck asked. Yes, Lear replied. Draw the same sign, and chant the word I chanted. Let your mind think of nothing, and we will see what appears to you, Hotchkinuck said. Lear quailed. The shaman had brought him here to perform sorcery. He had hoped he would find a way clear of the cursed Picts before this would occur. Yet now, with no way to escape, he had little choice. Feeling like a fool or a child imitating his father, Lear carefully traced the pattern he had seen into the ground. He intoned the word, and it felt unholy in his throat. Jebul Sag, Lear chanted. Nothing happened. Keep at it, Hotchkinuck encouraged. Jebul Sag, Lear chanted again, almost stumbling over the word. The warmth he had been feeling intensified. The wind began to shake the top of the trees. A crack of thunder pealed somewhere in an otherwise open sky. Lear looked up to Hotchkinuck. Keep trying. We are not leaving until I know your totem, the shaman said. Growling and inwardly concerned at how much like an animal it sounded, Lear chanted again. Jebul. Lear croaked. Now the heat in his body intensified. He felt as if he had a fever. His eyes, tongue, and heart all felt too warm. Then they began to feel as if they were burning. Control of his body lapsed. He roared the syllable, and his throat fell raw. Sag! Several of the trees cracked. Branches fell, and the sky darkened. All around the clearing a cacophony of corvid throats cawed. The trees were thick with crows, magpies, and blackbirds. Ravens were the loudest as the chorus of the birds squawked in anger. Lear tried to close his ears, but from his throat came an inhuman sound that mirrored those of the animals surrounding him. Yes, yes, Hotchkinuck screamed with pleasure. Yes, the man born of storms and death. It is true, the prophecy of the ancients. The doom of the Waker Aeon is at hand. The shaman giggled madly, and Lear had only enough time to glare at him before whatever spirits had been summoned by the rite acted. The lightning bolt slammed into the ground not more than 30 feet from Lear and Hotchkinuck. Cold like the most bitter and angry winter fell over them. He is mine, spirits of snow and storm, Hodgkinuk cried to them. "He belongs to the crow now." "Never!" a trio of disembodied voices within the winter wind shouted back. More lightning bolts slammed into the ground, but the unseen power of the circle protected them. Hodgkinuk began a strange song. He and the wind were at war. The voices of the wind were doing all they could to fight the shaman's will, but Hodgkinuk was more powerful. Perhaps it was the place, or perhaps it was the distance between them and the origin of the wind-born voices. But the storms quieted, and the wind was quelled. In the quiet, Lear heard himself sobbing. He felt unclean and twisted from the inside of his guts. The heat in his body began to dissipate. The shaman patted him on the back and laughed. "You bear the favor of the crow, the totem of the tribe. An opportunist, a seeker, a clever trickster is the crow. Once white and pure, burned black when he stole fire from the sun to give to men. Ever present at the edges of great events, such as battles. You have a crow totem, and you have a storm totem. Most rare, it is, to have more than a single totem. You were always meant to be here, Cimmerian. Perhaps your spirit is really that of a Pict, and it was born in the wrong body. Who can know? There will come a time, man of Cimmeria, when you will take my place. When that time comes, I shall work a mighty magic upon you, so that you no longer appear to have the cursed skin of your former tribe. You will be a Pict, the most noble and divine creature to ever walk upon the face of the earth. I am going to remake you in our image. But we are going to need more power." Lear tried to punch Hodgkinuk then, but he felt weakened from the weird heat that had suffused him. Blackness soon followed, and the last thing he saw was the murder of crows and their kin looking down at him from the trees. Arnak was watching one of the misshapen men of the crow flint knap arrowheads. The points were serviceable, but Arnak noted how often the man made small mistakes that other hunters would never have allowed. Here a small chip in the edge, and another the use of a point that would not last past the first use. "How is it you have no war leader?" he asked the man. "Hodgkinuk is all the leader we need," the man said by rote. "Hodgkinuk is leader," the men watching the craftsmen all said. Arnak found in their difficulty to speak proper Pictish one more troubling sign of degradation. He rose and bid the hunters goodbye. He had walked but a few paces when he saw 3 hunters run out of the camp. Hodgkinuk stood by the gate. "There is some trouble?" Arnak asked. "No, the blacksmith was too heavy for me to carry back. I have sent hunters to fetch him." Then Hodgkinuk regarded Arnak with apparent mirth. "I hear that the slave women prefer your touch." Arnak smiled as he replied, "Age begets wisdom. Your hunters are spry, but from what I hear they're often too quick." The 2 men laughed, each knowing the other was looking for a weakness. "The Cimmerian should find that out soon. Did you know his former tribe had none amongst them that found him a suitable mate? Proof their women have no true gauge of character. The blacksmith works tirelessly and is loyal. He will be a great service to any tribe allied to mine," Hodgkinuk said. "So we are speaking then of alliances?" Arnak asked. "Always. War is never far away," Hodgkinuk replied. "Especially when it will be spear slayers leading the effort," Arnak said. "Ah, then you are going to agree," Hodgkinuk said. "With some conditions. Non-negotiable conditions," Arnak said. Now it was Hodgkinuk's turn to look frustrated. "What considerations?" Hodgkinuk asked. "The conditions are best discussed later this evening at a feast. I am sure you will find them reasonable, as we will need to persuade many tribes to join our cause. You are in a unique position here, as there is no war chief to advise you on the best preparations. We will need to give those chieftains that will require motivation to take the trail assurances their own authority will not be challenged. Further, they will have to be seduced so that when they find themselves obeying your orders, they feel it their own idea," Arnak said. Hodgkinuk's face showed surprise. Arnak had considered his response very carefully. He needed to appeal to Hodgkinuk's power fantasies while at the same time seeming to be self-interested in his own tribe's gains. It was the only stance that Hodgkinuk was likely to believe. "Tonight, then. I will have the best of our spoils set aside for this momentous occasion. What of your blacksmith? Will he be joining us? Arnak asked. No, he is not quite ready yet. I have been working long and hard to tempt him away from his upbringing. Tonight we'll give him something the Cimmerians never allowed him, Hachkanuk said. What is that? Arnak asked. A woman. The finest in all the world, Hachkanuk hinted. With that, the shaman nodded towards the cave. Truly? Arnak asked. He's earned it. By the ancestors, he has earned it. By the time I am done with that boy, anything that was Cimmerian blood in him will be bled out. Scratch him, and he will bleed a pit, Hachkanuk bragged. I have played the stern and demanding father to him. Now it is time to be the proud parent. He will crave our approval and do our bidding. Arnak smiled because Hachkanuk was smiling. It is unwise to show fear before a predator. Arnak said his goodbyes and then walked across the camp to find Oak or Cat. He discovered the slave woman washing cloth. He whispered in Oak's ear, Tell me how to say this in Cimmerian. She did so, and Arnak repeated it back 5 times to make sure that he had it right.